Can you hear me?
Yes. Are we good to go?
Okay. Yep, we're good to go. And thanks for the invite. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. So let's take it from the top. Let's talk about some of your principles for success, your mindset, and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's two things that are very easy for everybody to really adopt, which is number one, positivity, glass is half full or half empty. It's very cliche, but cliches are always usually correct, which is, show me a person that looks at things with a half full attitude, and I'll show you just a happier person in life. And then the other thing is, not rocket science here, but you got to surround yourself with positive people. I mean, you're going to be a reflection and end up portraying the people you hang out with. So, the winning mindset for me is, am I hanging out with someone that's going to make me better and lift me up? Or am I hanging out with someone that's dragging me down? And if they're dragging you down, whether it's in life or business or sports, really got to cut those people out of your life. Just period, end of story.
Right. And it's hard sometimes because, okay, some of those people you can cut them out because they're, friends or coworkers, associates, things like that. But sometimes it's difficult for a lot of people because sometimes it's their parents or their family and different people like that. So it's not easy.
No, it's easier said than done for sure. And I'm not suggesting that leave your family or your brother, your sister, your mom, or your dad, but ultimately you do get to choose who are you going to for advice.
To your mind.
So although you can't control necessarily your coworkers at all points in time, or your parents or your siblings, what you can control is who do you choose to go to for advice. Who's in your inner circle.
Right. Who you're letting into your mind. So being a good guardian or custodian of your own mind. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, for sure.
And then positivity. One of the things I notice about that, of course, there are temperaments that are more predisposed towards positivity, but it seems like at the end of the day, it's more of a decision that we make, an act of the will, a conscious choice to focus on the positives.
Yeah, that's what the fun part is, right? It's not super hard, right? There's silver linings in just about anything in life if you look hard enough. And I just think more than ever, society today, it seems to be more negative minded, or, looking for excuses or looking for reasons to bring people down, or to, a very skeptical society right now. But what continues to be a controllable, which I talk a lot about, is like control the controllables, is, your mind and your attitude. And although a lot of times you wake up and don't accomplish during the course of the day what you want, or there's things that go bump in the night, things that can derail you and get you frustrated, you've got to stay with the mindset, if I'm doing the right things day in and day out, things will work out, life will work out. And you got to control that, and you got to believe that.
Right. And they do. And I think we could kind of hang our hat on the experience of other people as well as our own past experience, that when we were doing things right, or when we've seen other people do things right, it does work out. So it's not a false sense of hope or a pie in the sky. It actually is tangible. It's something we can hang our hat on a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And then another, pillar for me is don't go it alone. You do not have to be in the life goals that you're trying to tackle, business or athletics or whatever it might be. Man, there's a lot of people there that are on that journey with you. So no matter how big or bad you think you are, or, hey, I'm just a lone wolf, lone wolves usually don't survive out there long. And so embrace the theme of, if you don't have to go alone, why would you choose to go it alone? So I'm always saying that, like, pick a friend, pick a buddy, team up, bring an army with you.
I was just going to say that a lot of successful people say it takes an army, right? To make a champion, it takes a whole group. It makes a lot of sense. Do you think it's because maybe people are reluctant to that because of pride? Is it pride that's getting in the way? Or is it a stubbornness that I have to have my way? Or is it,
Yeah.
yeah, unwilling to maybe accept constructive criticism?
Yeah, I think it's all of those things, right? Like when, I think about as an athlete, it was, you know, your success is on you. You have to own this, you have to own that. And, we're built and wired early as athletes, like if you choose to be a winner, you're going to be a winner. Figure it out. Um, Mom and daddy aren't going to be there for you. You've got to do it for yourself. And you hear some conflicting messages, right? Like, as an athlete, should you try to win because, I really want to do this for my mom or dad? And people like, no, you got to do it for yourself first. So sometimes it's conflicting messaging that confuses an athlete. And then sometimes it's pride or, hey, like I'm afraid to ask for help, right? I'm a sales professional or I'm a manager. They hired me to be a manager. They assume that I know what I'm doing because I was a sales rep for 10 years. Now I'm a manager. And sometimes we're embarrassed to raise our hand and say, hey, I don't know how to do this. And sometimes you're like, crap, but I was a sales professional for 10 years. And is the boss that hired me, did he hire me to figure it out? Or did he or she hire me to raise my hand and say I need help? So I think it can be a pride thing. Absolutely. Oftentimes can be a pride thing. And sometimes it can be some mixed messaging that they've heard along the way. Be resourceful, figure it, all good things, right? Resourcefulness is one of the huge attributes that you want to have
Right.
as a professional in anything that you do. But those conflicting messages, don't, be resourceful, figure it out. You can do it. You don't need help. Be a man, whatever. And then now there's this, well, don't go it alone, bring an army. Why would you, if other people have done it and have those experiences, if you can fast forward yourself by listening and asking for help versus going through those bumpy moments on your own, like, so I think it's a societal change of like what we value.
Right.
So a lot of those things come into play.
Right. Because a lot of people look at it as they see someone who's very successful and they think a big ego. And in their head, that big ego means, well, they don't ask for help. When in fact, that's usually not true. What I find a lot of times the most successful people, they're not, they're assertive. So they're self-assured, but they are very humble. They're coachable. They're willing to learn from people. I guess maybe a mentor would be able to help a young business person with the art of knowing that balance, right? Because there is a science to it, but it's also an art of what to, give a little bit here, take a little bit there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that word mentor, I used to really, you know, 20 years ago, I'm like, mentors, I don't know. Is it just a thing? I'm a huge advocate of that now. And whether you're officially labeled a mentor or a coach, it doesn't matter. But you need those in life. And quite frankly, leaders love mentoring. I'm going to tell you that right now. Leaders, there's not a leader that I've met that I've said, hey, I really would like to pick your mind on, business strategy. And never have they said, you know what, go figure that out on your own. So that's the one thing that I think young people should know, athletes or people chasing a professional dream, is the people you respect and admire. If you actually reached out and said, can I talk to you for 5 minutes about your career and how you got off to a fast start or how you overcame adversity? It's kind of like our call, right? You said, hey, would you mind setting up a podcast and talking about some lessons learned in your life? How many people are going to say, no, I don't want to do it? So I think it's a reminder for people, don't be afraid to reach out, look for mentorship, and ask those vulnerable questions.
Right. It seems like in the business world, they do a pretty good job of, where generally there is a good thing going with a pay it forward mentality, because anyone who achieves any kind of level of success understands that I could never have gotten here if I didn't have good people who took some of their time and their resources and helped me along the way. So now it's my responsibility, and I want to pay that forward.
Yeah, and we should all seek cultures, business cultures, or sports cultures that want to pay it forward, right? That want to leave the jersey in a better spot, that aren't afraid of, you know, spreading their knowledge to someone that someday could be their boss, right? I always say there's enough success in this world to go around that you're not my competition. A coworker is not my competition. And I think sometimes people used to think that I'm gonna hoard all my secrets, all my tricks of the trade, all my knowledge, because I might have a best friend that's chasing the same job as I am, and I'm like, hey, there's enough success, there's enough opportunity out there for us both to be successful, and that's, I think, hugely important. And as far as like leaders always giving grace and thank yous, right? Um, Rarely do you see a leader get inducted to Hall of Fame and they're like, I did it by myself. I don't want to thank anybody. I have nobody to thank. And yesterday was a great reminder. I have a sales rep in Boise, Idaho that just secured, he and a teammate secured a $7 million deal. That's a really 20 plus years into his career. And he got the biggest order of his career. And the very first thing he said when I called to congratulate him, the very first thing he said was, hey, I didn't do this by myself. I had marketing people, I had med ed, I had sales enablement, I had a manager, I had a coworker, I had so many tools given to me. And that's a mindset. I mean, think about if every salesperson on your team has that winning mindset, right? Now we're cooking with gasoline because you have belief. You have belief at the foundation, which is the sales reps are the foot soldiers on the ground. And if they know there's an army of people that want to help, from marketers to managers to advisors to mentors to coaches, they quickly find out that they don't have to go it alone and they'll have more success. And we all love it because now we get pulled in more and we want to give back more because they're appreciative.
Right, right. And that goes along with what you said before about being positive. A specific there is having that mentality of abundance, having an abundance mindset. There's exactly what you said. There's a lot out there. There's enough for you. There's enough for me. And in some ways, even if companies are competitive in some ways, they could still have strategic partnerships in some ways and to help each other. And I think there are people who become successful that maybe they have a hoarding mentality. But a lot of times what you see with those people is it's not pure gasoline. It's not the optimal fuel for your car, because even if you reach a level of success, you're not happy. There's a bitterness, there's a lack of fulfillment. And what good is that? I would think we want to be successful to be a little bit happier, and we're compromising the happiness to be successful. It doesn't make sense.
No, you're absolutely, it's a bad spiral, right? That's a vicious cycle that you want to get out of really quick. And that, attitude of abundance is a really good philosophy. My boss talks about that all the time. And it allows, we're competitive enough that we know, as Americans, we seem to know we get measured in everything we do, right? And at Stryker, we get measured on everything we get. There's enough scoreboards out there that we kind of know how we're doing anyway. So I love being measured, absolutely, but not to the point where I think everything I do must be a competition against my counterpart.
Right, right. Because again, it's first of all, it's usually not factually accurate. And number two, you have that bitterness and that resentment, and that doesn't feel good. So
No, for sure. And that's what you're trying to build. You're trying to build a team, and you're trying to build teammates that want to lift each other up. There's no better feeling than that, by the way, is knowing that your coaching, your advice is propelling someone else forward. And that's what I look for with leaders. I'm like, the first question I ask a potential manager candidate is, if you went home and talked to your mom and dad about managing, which is basically coaching and teaching, and if your parents laugh at you, like, you as a teacher or a coach, no way. Like, then maybe you shouldn't go into management. Maybe you have to reassess if what do they mean by that? Are you a lone wolf? Are you too selfish? Will you get more joy out of others' success than you will on yours? And the way I looked at it is, when you're an individual contributor, hitting the number that the corporation puts in front of you feels great. You're pushed, you're challenged, it's a stretch goal, right? And it took you 12 months to get there. And during the course, you didn't know if you were going to make it or not, because there was moments of trials and tribulations that you had to get through. So when you make it, it's euphoria, right? And at Stryker, we celebrate those wins big time. But as a manager, you get to go through that maybe 10 or 11 times a year if you have 10 or 11 on your team and they get there. So if you like hitting your number as an individual, as a coach, you potentially get to hit that and have that same feeling 10 times over.
Right. And that's a great point there, especially making that comparison to coaches and maybe managers there, that if they have that mentality, the good ones, the great ones, they would rather help someone else succeed. And the sting, the pain is also when they see other people fail even more so than themselves in both coaching and management and business.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Dan Gable, he's quoted often. I think one of the reasons that when he did get out of the sport early as a coach, I think the pain of having his wrestlers lose in the national finals, like, was stinging him at a large degree. On the other hand, if you asked him, did you have more satisfaction as a coach or as an athlete winning? And he'll tell you as a coach. So the pain can be harder, but the gain can, the enjoyment and thrill can be higher too.
Right. But that's the beauty of having a service profession or a service vocation, that it's, and psychologists say this, we are definitely, by scientific evidence, we're happier than when we give, when we're not turned inward on ourselves, but when we're giving out to other people. So it makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting how it works that way. What leads us to more success also in that same way, if we're doing it right, is also going to make us happier.
100%. I couldn't agree more.
Oh,
For sure.
that's great stuff. But what would be, I guess, to flip that question around, last point we'll make, what would you say some of the big roadblocks are for people to be successful, or common mental mistakes that you see them make?
Great question. In its simplest form, number one is I would say two things. One is maybe not shooting high enough, right? Like, hey, I'm gonna keep things where they're at. I'm gonna keep things status quo. What's been working, my job is not to mess it up, right? And if you're inheriting something that's been working, right? Sometimes you get a management job and they're like, hey, you got to turn things around. We've got a cancer-ridden team. You're gonna have to make some personnel changes. That's a little bit easier in some respects, because you have to activate, you have to make change in order to win, and you've been hired to make certain changes. But oftentimes someone gets promoted and things are going really well with the team they left behind, and you come back and you say, my goal is not to mess it up. I just need to keep the wheels on the track. Person before me has things rolling. And I think anytime you have a mindset that says, I got to hang on or just keep it going, you're playing not to lose. Right. And it reminds me, when I first took over the job that I have currently 9 years ago, people said, Paul, you have to protect our culture. You're a salesman. You're a coach. You're a player's coach kind of thing. Right. And man, we need you just to keep our culture going. I had, 300-400 people telling me, just keep our culture where it's at. And therefore, what was my mindset? My mindset was keep it status quo, hang on to our culture, be resistant to change. And I'm going to just hang on. And after a year of doing that, I actually, apologized to my sales force. And I said, I don't think you really want me in the position I'm at to just hang on, to keep it status quo, to not evolve and change. Let's make the good old days tomorrow, not the good old days yesterday. So I think a common mistake is being afraid of change, and just trying to hang on and, and keep it going versus putting your signature on it and amplify versus holding on. So that's if you're on a winning team that you're inheriting, right? And I think that's a common mistake that managers make when they take over a winning team, being that afraid of change. I think if you're taking over a losing team, you probably know right off the bat that the person hiring you saying, man, you got to blow it up. You got to start from scratch, and I think maybe a common mistake that if you're in that type of inheritance position where you inherited a losing team is either A, going too slow, right? Getting caught into being afraid to have tough conversations, right? You've got someone that is killing you on the team, but they're friends with you. You're in that friendship zone with them. They're a good person, but they're not playing and doing the things right. But you think maybe, I always say you can coach up one grade, right? If talent wins the day and culture wins the day, and you're setting a great culture, and then you throw a great strategy in there, if the talent isn't where it needs to be, you have to make change on average talent. And I think that would be the other common mistake is I'm going to coach them 2 levels. And I always believe in coaching. I mean, I wouldn't be in this job if I didn't believe in coaching, but you've got to recognize who's listening and willing to be coached. And if you're giving your all, putting effort and coaching into somebody, and you're giving it your all, but you're just seeing them not responding, in the business world, you do need to get to a point where you need to either able to be fish or cut bait, right? I think everybody that's a good coach can coach up 1 grade. I don't know if you can coach up 2 to 3 grades. I don't know if you can make a D talent an A talent unless they're very, very, very coachable, and they might just not have the skill set. So the 2 lessons learned would probably be, if you're on a winning team, don't be afraid to amplify and make changes favorably just because you thought what won yesterday is going to win tomorrow. So you don't want to disrupt the apple cart. And I think if you're on a losing team inheriting, taking too long to assess your talent and being afraid to pull the trigger would be some mistakes that I think managers make.
Excellent. That's great information, Paul. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. I know all our viewers are going to get a lot out of this.
Yeah, it's great. I appreciate what you guys are doing, and winning mindset is what it's all about. So let's keep winning.
Thank you very much. Yes, absolutely. With your advice, that's the direction.
Okay.
Thanks again, Paul. I appreciate it.
You got it. Thank you.
Take care.
Appreciate it. All
Bye.
right. Bye now.